Hey guys, as we wind down tonight, we're slipping quietly behind the stone columns and laurel crowns of ancient Rome, not to marvel at its temples or conquests, but to peek behind the curtains, into the bedrooms, the brothels, the smoky corners of banquet halls where secrets whispered louder than prayers. You're not a senator, you're not even a citizen, you're just there, watching, ducking under the moral scaffolding of a world where desire was never just desire, it was hierarchy.
Allah.
And deeply unsettling eye contact. And no, you might not survive this one, not because of violence or plague, but because you'll spend half the time pretending you're not confused, and the other half realizing that absolutely nothing was private. So before you settle in, feel free to give the video a like and hit subscribe if you're truly enjoying the journey. You can also leave a comment. Let me know where you're listening from, what time it is there. It's always a small wonder to see people tuning in from so many corners of the world. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that gentle hum in the background, and together, let's ease into tonight's story. In the Roman Empire, sex wasn't sacred. It was a transaction, a power play, a legal argument wrapped in oil and disappointment. You've probably heard the legends. Wild orgies, marble baths, lovers draped in silk. But what you haven't heard is what it was like for the people who didn't write the poems, the slaves, the merchants. The wives calculating reputation like accountants with no room for error. You'll learn about the slave girl who wasn't allowed to say no. The emperor's wife, who maybe, or maybe not, slept her way into history. The curses etched into lead and buried under doorsteps, just to stop a rival's affection. Tonight's journey isn't about scandal. It's about survival. In a world where intimacy was a ladder and someone was always at the bottom, let's begin. You belong to someone. It's the beginning and the end of it. Your property, like a lamp or a spoon, or the slightly dented statue of Mars in the atrium that everyone keeps bumping into, except the spoon doesn't get summoned in the middle of the night. You do. You're a slave in a Roman domus, and whether you're assigned to the kitchen, the bathhouse, or the bedroom, well, assignments are flexible. Your body is available to your master, to his friends, to his teenage son, who thinks boundaries are for Gauls. There's no consent because there's no question. The law makes it clear. A slave can't be violated. It's because legally you can't be violated. You're a tool. And tools don't get traumatized. Maybe you thought working indoors was better, safer than the fields, easier than the mines. And sure, the floors are marble, not mud. But you quickly learn that marble is cold. Cold underfoot, and colder when you're kneeling beside a couch with your eyes politely unfocused. Sometimes they want you there just to be seen. You're part of the decor. A breathing accessory that fills the silence between sips of watered wine. Other times they want more. And you don't get to say when. You smell of olive oil. But not the good kind. The cheap. Sharp kind used to disguise the sweat of anxiety and days without proper bathing. The air in your chamber always carries the sour undertone of crushed grapes, tired skin, and the faint whiff of another slave crying quietly into a folded tunic. Maybe you try to be invisible. Maybe you try to be useful. Maybe you try to be forgettable. But forgettable people still get remembered at inconvenient times, especially when your owner's dinner ended with too much Falernian wine and a very boring political speech. The other slaves don't look at you, not because they don't care, but because they know tomorrow it might be them. Expectation. A stable household with routine. Reality. You're the routine. Expectation. Serving wine at a banquet. Reality. Serving your master in his bed because he found the wine underwhelming. You think about running sometimes, but the dogs are fast, the walls are high, and your feet are still sore from scrubbing the mosaic floors for 6 hours yesterday, each tile judging you with smug geometry. And the worst part? You still feel relief when someone else is chosen instead. That quiet, shameful breath you take. Not of joy, but of temporary survival. You tell yourself you're just surviving, that tomorrow will be less humiliating. But tomorrow smells the same. It's like old incense, damp linen, and someone else's control. There's no escape. Just endurance. Just obedience. Just hoping that the master's wife doesn't decide your competition, because then it gets worse. There's no soap, there's no mattress, there's no peace. There's a curtain in the room. It's thin, embroidered and technically made of fabric. It sways when someone walks past, uselessly decorative, like a lace umbrella in a hailstorm. You think maybe it's there to give the illusion of privacy. But illusion is the key word. A suggestion, like pretending that the olive oil jug is clean or that dinner was filling. You sleep behind this curtain, if you sleep at all. The master's chamber lies just beyond. He snores like an angry boar. His wife doesn't snore, but her silence is more dangerous. It listens. Sometimes you're called through the curtain. Sometimes they argue beyond it, and you press your palms to your ears, as if muting your hearing might also erase your presence. Sometimes they forget the curtain exists, and walk through it mid-sentence, like slicing air with indignation. One time, a visitor laughed at it. "You call that modesty?" he said, and no one disagreed. You don't undress to sleep, not because you're modest, because you're practical. Clothes take time to adjust when summoned suddenly, and you've learned that buttons are a liability. You lie stiffly on a mat that smells like the last 3 people who used it. The straw inside pokes through in all the wrong places, like it's trying to make a point. The smell? Somewhere between mildew and tired feet. You no longer notice it. Much. Expectation. A chamber servant gets quiet tasks and lighter work. You are always within earshot, always available, always pretending that hearing nothing is a virtue. Expectation. The curtain gives you space. Reality. It gives them permission. There's a bowl near the mat. Not for food, for washing. Though no one remembers to change the water, you've used it 3 days in a row, it's starting to smell like defeat. You swirl it absently at night, hoping the movement counts as cleaning. It doesn't. You're still sticky, and your back still hurts from kneeling. The wall next to you has a crack. It's just enough to let a sliver of lamplight in. At first it bothered you. Now it's your only clock. When it dims, you know it's late. When it flares, someone has entered. Either way, it tells time better than any sun ever did. You tried, once, to hang a cloth across the curtain. The mistress removed it, said it blocked the aesthetic flow. That was the day you learned that decor beats dignity in every Roman household. The children sneak through sometimes. They want honey cakes, or they want stories. Or they want to pull your hair and call it affection. You smile. You tell them about Mercury and his flying sandals. Don't tell them you haven't had sandals in 2 years. And then you hear footsteps. Again, there's no knock. There's no asking. Just the soft shishi of sandals on mosaic. Just the curtain stirring. Just your breath, held for one more evening. You lie down again. Your mat is flat. Your limbs ache. Your ears ring with things you weren't meant to hear. Curtain flutters behind you, and you don't close your eyes. Not yet. Because in this house, even sleep must be earned. Bathing, in theory, is supposed to make you feel clean. In practice, it mostly makes you damp and slightly humiliated. You've been given a rag. You've been given a bucket. Not warm water, just water, possibly shared, definitely judgmental. The bathhouse sounds glamorous when others talk about it. Heated rooms, polished marble, soft steam curling through the air like perfume for the rich. You, however, are not the rich. You are backstage. You get what's left behind, siphoned from the runoff of comfort. Bathing for you happens late, when the master-esque guests have gone home, and the household no longer needs you to smile. Your washing station is the corner near the servant's alcove. There's a chipped basin, a cracked jar of stale oil, and a piece of cloth that's frayed into something resembling a limp sea creature. You dab at your arms like you're trying to remove sin with a sponge cake. It doesn't work. Expectation. A calming rinse before sleep. Reality. A race against time, cold, and splinters. Expectation, warm oil, and perfumed soap. Reality. Old olive mash, and a soapstone shard that smells faintly like someone else's armpit. The water sloshes onto your sandals, which you keep on to avoid stepping in something unidentifiable. There's always something. A leaf. A beetle. A piece of food that might have once been bread. Now indistinguishable in both texture and purpose. You scrub under your arms. Not because you care, but because the head steward once commented that you were too ripe for proximity. You try not to think about that. Try not to think at all. Your hair gets rinsed with wine dregs once a week, It's not because it's effective, because someone heard it was fashionable in Alexandria. All it does is make you sticky and attract bees. You dry off with a piece of linen that was, in a past life, a curtain. It now carries the scent of 10 washings and 0 sun. You hang it carefully. Last time you left it draped, it slipped into the bucket, and your bath turned into a sopping revenge from the gods. There's no mirror, just a bronze plate someone scratched years ago. You glimpse yourself sometimes, blurred, distorted, tired. You look like someone who has been, half cleaned and never quite put back together. You once found a crushed fig under the bucket. It had been stepped on. Twice you stared at it for a long time, wondering whether to eat it. You didn't, but you thought about it longer than you'd admit. Now you climb into your corner, damp skin against straw. Cold rising from the floor like a disappointed ghost. The bucket drips once, then again, and you realize with a sigh that it will drip all night. One soft insult at a time, you are admired. That's what the steward says. It's admired like a vase or a well-trimmed hedge. You are charming, pleasant, and pleasing to look at, which sounds like praise, until you realize it's code. For availability, for expectation, for attention that comes without asking and never leaves quietly. One of the master's guests has taken an interest. He always seems to be standing slightly too close. He smells like figs and old ambition. His hands are soft, his teeth are not. He compliments you with the rhythm of someone who's never had to earn affection, only assign it. You try to stay busy when he's around, washing, folding, scrubbing something already clean, but he always finds you. Behind the column, near the bread ovens, the corridor where shadows stretch like gossip. Expectation. The Roman elite are refined and tasteful. Reality. They're just as handsy, only more articulate about it. Expectation. Being beautiful gives you power. Reality. It gives other people ideas. You hear whispers, the other servants mutter as you pass. Not cruelly, not exactly, but with that tone. It's the one that says, "Better you than me," layered in sour sympathy. One night the guest leaves something behind. Coin, a bracelet, a suggestion. It sits on your mat like a riddle. Do you return it? Do you pretend not to see it? Do you hope it disappears like so many of your decisions? It once heard a poet describe love as fire. This feels more like smoke. It chokes, it lingers, it stains your clothes, and no one asks how it got there. The master's wife notices eventually. Of course she does. Her questions are subtle. Her punishments are not. Your chores triple. Your meals shrink. Your name is spoken with brittle politeness, like something sharp wrapped in silk. You were never asked if you wanted admiration. You were simply given it, like a load to carry. And when it becomes too heavy, you're the one accused of being clumsy. You don't cry. Not because you're strong, because it draws attention. And attention here is the most dangerous currency of all. There's a moment each night, just one. When you're alone, curled into the smallest version of yourself on the mat, you think maybe no one sees you right now. You hold on to that, like a scrap of cloth in a sandstorm. It's not love. It never was. It's interest. An interest fades until the next guest arrives. You've heard the word libertas whispered with reverence in the halls. Freedom, the Roman dream. Concept carried like a banner by men in togas who have never had to clean under a couch. While two senators argue about wine taxes, freedom exists. You've just never met it in person. They talk about manumission, like it's a possibility. As if good behavior and humble service could buy your way out. You've seen it happen once or twice. Slave freed in old age, handed a worn tunic and a handshake like that, erases 40 years of submission. But mostly it's a story. A rumor. Like perfect bread or kind masters. Expectations serve long enough and you'll earn your way out. Reality. You serve long enough and they forget you've ever wanted to leave. There's a ceremony for freedom, formal process. A magistrate, a scale, a coin, all very symbolic. But the real ceremony, the one that matters, is the quiet shift in how people look at you, or stop looking at you entirely. Because even freedmen aren't truly free. You owe everything to your former master, loyalty, respect, the occasional errand. Your name still carries his stamp, like a wax seal that never quite melts away. You imagine it sometimes, being free, owning a stall, selling wine that tastes only mildly like vinegar, walking through the city without permission, without purpose, just walking. You imagine what it's like to own your own sandals. Then someone snaps their fingers, and the dream disappears like steam in a cold bath. Freedom in Rome is shaped like a ladder with a broken bottom rung. You can climb, but only if you were born on the second step. You, unfortunately, were born under the ladder, with a broom in your hand and a debt no one wrote down but everyone remembers. A freed woman once returned to visit the household. She wore nicer clothes, carried herself with something like dignity. Still, the steward made her wait outside. "She'll always be one of us," he said. Not with pride, with warning. The truth is, you could be granted freedom. You could be handed it like a leftover. But you'd never own it. Not really. Not when your accent betrays your birthplace. Your scars betray your labor, and your eyes keep darting like you're expecting orders. There's no clean break, just a longer leash. You wipe down the same table for the third time. Not because it needs cleaning, but because it's something you can control. The rag is damp, the wood is smooth. You move in circles, small ones, safe ones. You wonder if free people walk in straight lines. The night ends, and your work begins. Again, they call you cubicularia, which sounds elegant, almost like a title someone would carve into stone. But it just means you handle the bedchamber and all the mess that lingers afterward. And yes, there is always a mess. Sheets, if they're used, are rumpled like defeated togas. Floors are littered with wine stains, fig skins, the occasional dropped sandal, and once, memorably, an entire eel. You don't ask. You don't look too closely. You just clean. Expectation. The Romans were clean and refined. Reality. Someone dropped an oyster on the floor and stepped on it, barefoot, and no one said a word. Expectation. Chamber work is easier than field work. Reality. You still sweat, bend, kneel, lift, carry, wipe. And pray the stain is wine and not something with implications. There's a long-handled brush in the corner. Its bristles are sparse. Its handle splintered. Mocks you as you reach for it. The ancient Roman version of a passive-aggressive coworker. The soap is made of ash and fat. The smell is somewhere between scorched olives and regret. You scrub the floor while trying not to inhale. The tiles are cold, patterned in cheerful mosaic scenes. Dolphins, nymphs, the occasional god looking surprised. You've always thought the gods in mosaic looked vaguely disappointed, like they know what happens in this room after dark, and they wish they didn't. The mattress is lifted and aired. It smells like breath and body and last week's arguments. The pillowcases are dyed purple, expensive, beautiful, and definitely not washed enough. You beat them gently with a stick, not because it helps, because it makes you feel better. Someone once said that cleanliness is next to godliness, but in your experience, it's just next to exhaustion. There's no divine reward for scrubbing out footprints from the floor at dawn. Just another list of tasks. Another tray to carry. Another command barked with the urgency of someone who never bends their own back. And once everything is done, the floor gleaming, the sheets smoothed, the air cleared of last night's perfume and politics, you return to your corner. You have, technically, bathed today. Technically, eaten. Technically, slept. You lie down again on your mat. The curtain still sways slightly. The bucket still drips. The brush has gone quiet, but the ache in your knees chants softly in its place. You serve the bed, then you scrub the floor. Tomorrow, you'll do both again and again. There's no rest. There's no privacy. There's no pause. Just you. Just the rag. Just the room, pretending not to remember. You don't attend the banquet. Of course not, but you serve it. Moving through the perfumed crowd like a silent breeze that smells faintly of vinegar and exhaustion. You carry trays, refill cups, and try not to be noticed, which is difficult when your stomach growls louder than the flautist. The guests recline, laugh, spill things. Someone gestures for more honeyed dormice. Someone else drops a fig and doesn't pick it up. You make a note, not out of pettiness, but survival, because what they drop is often what you eat. Expectation. Roman banquets are elegant affairs of intellectual discussion, reality. One man is arguing with a potted plant, another just fell asleep in his fish sauce. Expectation. Servants are invisible, reality. You are constantly watched, but never seen. The food smells incredible. Roast pork rubbed with spices you can't pronounce. Got peacocks, their feathers plucked, their bodies glazed and stuffed with things you didn't know were edible. Chickpeas mashed into buttery paste. Olives glistening like secrets. You inhale as you walk, pretending it's enough. Your hands tremble slightly as you carry the wine jug. Not from nerves, from hunger. You haven't eaten since dawn, and that was a crust of barley bread and a sip of leftover goat-s milk. Thin, sour, and full of betrayal. Sometimes, when the feast ends and the guests lurch home with stained tunics and smug hearts, you get what's left. Not the best cuts, not the centerpieces, but bones with a little meat on them, crumbs with flavor still clinging. Dishes licked halfway clean and then abandoned, like dignity in a bad poem. There's a basket in the kitchen. It's called the servant's bowl, though it's more like a chaotic pile of edible questions. Bits of pastry, cold lentils, half a date someone bit once and forgot. You pick carefully. You pretend the fig was whole. You chew slowly. Pretend the olive pit isn't cracked from someone else's teeth. You're not alone. The others gather too. Low voices, quick hands, the occasional joke that tastes better than anything in the basket. Someone passes you a scrap of fish. It's tough. It's cold. It's beautiful. You eat in the corner, near the hearth, where it's warm and no one important ever looks. You eat without utensils, with fingers that still smell faintly of lemon and wax. You eat fast, because the steward might come in and decide the bowl needs cleaning before you're done. The banquet is over. The guests are gone. The laughter has faded. Your dinner begins. You've seen it happen. A glance, a joke, a hand lingering a moment too long. It's not between equals. That's not how this world works. But between people with just enough status to flirt and just enough power to pretend it. It's harmless for everyone else. For you, attraction is not a game. It's a trap disguised as an opportunity. In this house, certain people are allowed to love loudly. The master, for example, whose dalliances are whispered about. Never punished. His cousin, who brings different lovers each Saturnalia and smiles like he invented desire. Even the steward once took a liking to a merchant's daughter, and no one batted an eye, except to gossip about her sandals. Expectation, love in Rome, is about passion. Reality, it's about permission. Expectation, you might be admired for your charm. Reality, you're reprimanded for being noticed. One time a guest flirted with you, openly, boldly, like it was a party game. You smiled carefully, because ignoring him was dangerous, but enthusiasm was worse. The next day, the mistress reassigned you to chamber pots. There are rules. Unspoken, thick as brick, sharp as politics. You don't look directly at the son of the house. You don't stand too close to female guests. Don't speak unless spoken to. And even then, you measure your voice like it might spill something. Attraction is currency, and you don't get to spend it. You once caught the baker's boy looking at you. He blushed, turned away. It was sweet. It was stupid. You avoided him for a week just in case someone noticed. It's the idea of something soft, something mutual. It's dangerous. It's not because it's forbidden, because it's laughable. You've seen what happens when a servant steps out of line. One of the kitchen girls, just 15, smiled too often at the master's friend. Wow. She was gone by morning. No one said why. They just washed her sleeping mat and replaced her by dinner. So you keep your gaze lowered, your voice flat, your body forgettable. You train yourself to move with efficiency, not elegance. You tell yourself attraction is for statues and theater masks, not for people like you. And when your thoughts wander, when you imagine a kind hand, a private smile, a name whispered not in command, but in care, you shake your head and wipe the table again. 'Cause here, longing is a liability, and love is always someone else's privilege. The mistress watches you. Not all the time, of course. Oh, that would be too obvious. But enough. Enough for your skin to feel her gaze like a drop of cold oil. Slow, sticky, and impossible to ignore. At first it was subtle. A raised eyebrow. A question that felt more like bait. Did you serve the guest wine? Or was it Clodia? Were you in the atrium last night? Or just passing through? You answered carefully. Always carefully. With words wrapped in linen, clean, neutral, folded at the edges, but linen tears. Expectation. If you're obedient, you're safe. Reality. Obedience is invisible until someone decides it's suspicious. Expectation. Jealousy is between lovers. Reality. It's between mistress and servant, and the mistress always wins. You know the rules. You've lived inside them for years. You know not to smile too brightly, not to stand too close, not to seem pleasant in the wrong direction. But the rules are like wet wax tablets. They change when pressure is applied. Da-da-da-da-da. And jealousy applies pressure. One morning, you find your tunic missing. Another day, your shift in the kitchen mysteriously swaps to chamber duty. Right after a new guest arrives, tasks double. Meals disappear. The mat you sleep on has been moved closer to the door and farther from anything that might be mistaken for status. You don't protest. Protest is noise. Noise is danger. A rumor spreads that you've been encouraging attention. You haven't? Of course you haven't. But denial sounds like guilt. Silence sounds like guilt. Existing sounds like guilt sometimes. Someone drops a bowl near you. No apology, just a look. A little smile, as if to say, "It started." The other servants step back politely, not out of cruelty, out of experience. They've seen it before. The long, slow descent into disfavor. Tasks pile up. The glances sharpen. Your name becomes shorthand for problem. You once thought jealousy was an emotion. Here it's a strategy. The mistress doesn't shout. She smiles. She corrects your folding technique 3 times in a row. She rewashes what you've already cleaned. She accidentally forgets to include your name on the ration list for the evening meal. You eat crusts that night. Crumbs from someone else's plate. You chew slowly, imagining the feast upstairs. You think of the mistress, reclining, picking at olives while plotting your downfall with a voice like polished bronze. And all because someone else looked at you a moment too long. We're just standing there. We're just holding a tray. You didn't ask to be seen. You only hoped to be ignored. You lie on your mat, knees pulled up, arms tucked in, as if folding yourself smaller might make you disappear. The bucket beside you drips, again, 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 like a lazy clock that only tells time and irritations. The curtain moves slightly. Breeze maybe or not. You don't check, you don't want to know. Instead you escape. Not in body. Rome doesn't permit that. But in your head you slip away. You imagine a farm somewhere, a quiet hill. A donkey with one ear flopped over and a turnip patch that smells like spring. You imagine no one calling your name. No sandals slapping urgently down the hallway. No whispered threats wrapped in compliments. Expectation, sleep brings rest. Reality, sleep brings memories, and sometimes they knock harder than the steward. Expectation, the day is over. Reality, your thoughts have just begun pacing. You hear someone cough upstairs. A door creaks open. Someone laughs. A soft, syrupy chuckle that drips through the ceiling like spilled wine. You close your eyes tighter. You've mastered the art of fake sleep. Deep, even breaths. A limp arm draped just so. You've tricked more than one guest. But not yourself. Some nights you imagine what you'd do if you woke up somewhere new. A clean room, a real bed, a door you could lock from the inside. You wouldn't even need a feast, just bread, full loaf, not too stale. Maybe a dog, one that's not trained to bark at you. But then a rat scurries across the floor, bold, loud, entitled, and you're back. Rome hasn't let you go. The mat still pokes, the straw still itches. Your body still remembers every name someone called you today, and each one sticks like burrs on a tunic. You turn over, slowly, carefully. You bump the wall. A flake of plaster drifts onto your blanket. You let it stay? Because tonight, you're not in Rome, you're by a lake. You're watching reeds wave. You're drinking water that doesn't taste like clay. You're wearing clean clothes that fit. You're invisible. But not because someone made you that way. You're free, just for this one moment before the morning finds you. You hold on to that. Even as the curtain stirs, even as the bucket drips, even as the city reminds you who you are. You close your eyes, you wait for silence. Pretend. You hear her name before you see her. Messalina. It arrives like perfume. Thick, lingering, impossible to ignore. In the corridors, in the kitchens, at the market stall where old women sell half-rotten dates, her name drifts through the air like smoke from a fire you re-pretending isn't real. She's the empress, technically, wife of Claudius, mother, noble woman. But that's not how people say her name. They say it like a warning. like a challenge. It's like the start of a very complicated story told after too much wine and not enough sense. Expectation. An empress is poised, modest, quiet. Reality. Messalina throws banquets that last 3 days and still finds time to ruin someone's life before breakfast. Expectation. Political wives stand beside their husbands. Reality. She was always 10 steps ahead, or 10 feet beneath, depending on who's telling the tale. You don't meet her directly, but you carry her robes once. Purple, embroidered, so heavy it feels like lifting ambitions stitched into silk. They smell faintly of spikenard and salt. One has a stain shaped like a wine cup in a secret. The guards won't look you in the eye when you ask where she is. One mumbles, with the actor, another just laughs. The kind of laugh that ends in a cough and a glance over the shoulder. They say she took lovers, dozens, maybe hundreds. Maybe that's an exaggeration, maybe it isn't. The point was never the number, it was the audacity. The boldness of treating desire like a game of dice in a city where women are supposed to smile politely and say nothing about their own pleasure. The slaves whisper about the night races, where she competed with a courtesan to see who could bed the most men before dawn. Some say she won. Some say it didn't matter. Some say the courtesan retired out of exhaustion and awe. You clean a room she's just left. The air is warm, fragrant, unsettled. The sheets smell like pepper and danger. There's a broken sandal under the couch and a pearl earring in the brazier. You leave them both. Intact objects feel dishonest here. What shocks you most isn't her power. It is that she doesn't apologize for it. In a city obsessed with control, she's the loose tile in the mosaic no one can quite pry up. Beautiful, slippery, and always stepping out of place on purpose. Of course, someone like that can't survive forever. But for now, she moves through marble halls like a storm in velvet, and everyone watches, even the statues. Especially the statues. You've seen him. Emperor Claudius shuffling through the palace like a man always halfway through a thought. His tunic slightly wrinkled, his sandals mismatched, his eyes constantly squinting at documents, as if the ink might rearrange itself into clarity if he stares long enough. He doesn't look like an emperor, not the kind poets carve into marble. He looks like someone's uncle who was supposed to supervise the wine cellar, but accidentally inherited the empire. And he definitely doesn't look like the kind of man who could keep up with Messalina. Expectation, an emperor knows everything. Reality. Claudius knew the price of grain, the names of obscure provinces, and nothing about what was happening in his own bedchamber. Expectation. A husband would notice betrayal. Reality. He was too busy with legal reforms and speech practice to notice the open secret wrapped in perfume and pearls. He once served him mulled wine. He thanked you, politely, absent-mindedly, then spilled it on a scroll about river tolls. His aide sighed like it was the 10th time that morning. You wondered if he ever truly looked anyone in the eye. You doubted it? They say he loved Messalina, or at least trusted her. Or maybe he just thought affection and control were the same thing. It's hard to say with men who spend more time with decrees than with people. Meanwhile, she built a palace of secrets. She entertained guests he never met. Hosted gatherings that never made the official calendar. Made promises that only required a whisper and a smile. You suspect the real empire lived in her bedroom, and Claudius was just a figurehead placed near the door for decoration. The betrayal didn't come all at once. It built slowly. A glance here, a letter there. A marriage. Yes, a marriage. While Claudius was out of town. That part still stuns you. She married another man, publicly, boldly, with witnesses and flowers and a ceremony that smelled like lunacy and confidence. Imagine Claudius returning, standing in his own palace, reading a report, blinking slowly. She did what? Like the moment when a chicken realizes the fox was actually invited in? You once watched a servant drop a tray of figs, freeze, and whisper, "He's going to notice eventually, right?" No one answered. They just started sweeping. And when he finally did notice, the response was swift. Confused, but swift. Heads rolled. Literally, Messalina ran, begged, wept, plotted. But it was over. Too much, too public, too bold. And Claudius, slow but not stupid, signed the execution order with the same hand he used to write tax laws. With resignation, a little ink, and no poetry. You weren't invited to the wedding, obviously, but you heard it. Everyone did. It echoed down the halls like a festival that forgot to be discreet. Laughter, flutes, the sharp ring of sandals. It's clapping too hard against marble. Someone dropped a garland into a fountain. Someone else sang too loudly, too early in the day. A wedding in the palace, while the emperor was out of town. Not a whispered affair, not a quiet arrangement in shadows and side rooms. A ceremony, flowers, witnesses. The whole mess wrapped in roses and delusion. It wasn't just betrayal, it was theater. Messalina didn't hide it. She unveiled it like a new toga at a funeral. Bold, inappropriate, and impossible to ignore at expectation. If you betray the emperor, you do it carefully. Reality. She sent out invitations. Expectation. Secret affairs happen in whispers. Reality. This one came with music and snacks. You helped arrange the courtyard that morning. No one told you what for, but you could tell. Too many petals, too much citrus oil. The presence of musicians who looked both honored and terrified. What? Of them kept asking, "Are we allowed to be here?" The man she married was Gaius Silius, handsome, ambitious, and until very recently, not the emperor. You saw him once. His hair was too perfect, his smile too symmetrical. He wore his tunic like he was posing for a statue, and couldn't quite believe it. Hadn't been carved yet. They stood under an awning, her in something white and shimmering. Him looking like the embodiment of a bad idea. The priest's voice trembled. The crowd clapped cautiously. Like people unsure whether this was a joke or a revolution, you held a tray of pomegranates during the vows. No one noticed you. That was the point. You watched Messalina smile, not a nervous smile, not a secret one, a victorious one. Like she'd married herself, and the man next to her was just there for symmetry. People whispered behind their hands. One senator left halfway through, muttering about divine retribution and needing a drink. Later, as you swept up fallen petals, someone said, "Well, that's the end of that." You didn't ask what they meant. You already knew. A secret wedding. Shouted across marble halls. Crime committed in broad daylight with olives on the table. Wasn't subtle. It was Roman, and the consequences were already running up the road. Asterisk, asterisk, the day after the wedding, everything was normal, too normal. The kind of normal that tastes like watered-down wine and lies. The guards stood at their posts. The steward barked orders about laundry. The doves in the courtyard cooed like they hadn't just witnessed treason with feathered indifference. No one spoke of it directly. They cleared flower petals like they were pollen. They swept up garlands like they were weeds. One soldier even hummed, "Badly expectation." A scandal like this stops the city. Reality. The city yawns, stretches, and waits to see who gets blamed. Expectation. Messalina's actions would spark panic. Reality. It sparked silence. Careful silence. The kind that makes even the mosaics seem less colorful. You carried breakfast to a senator's guest quarters. He nodded politely, then said nothing about the wedding he'd attended the day before. Not even when you placed the wine, the very same vintage poured during the ceremony, on his table. You wiped the table twice. He didn't stop you. Look at you. In the kitchen, two servants argued over a fish loudly as if noise might drown out the unspoken. One whispered later, "If we keep pretending nothing happened, maybe it didn't." The other just rolled her eyes and salted the fish with the bitterness of foresight. Rome, you've learned, has two modes: excess and denial. And sometimes both at once. A naked man could ride through the forum screaming prophecy, and senators would step over him to discuss marble procurement. You asked the laundry girl if she'd seen the empress that morning. She paused, then said, "Which one?" Which was either sarcasm or a survival tactic. Possibly both. You start to think maybe it's just you. Maybe no one else noticed the full ceremony in the atrium. Maybe it was a fever dream you shared with 50 other people. Maybe Rome works like that. But then late that night, the whisper spreads. The emperor is back. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Today. And suddenly the silence cracks. The steward drops a platter. A scribe drops a scroll. The guard at the east gate forgets to salute. People rush. People clean. People remember what order looks like badly and too late because pretending is only useful until power returns. Then, suddenly, everything you didn't see becomes your fault. You stand in the hallway holding a wine jug, not moving, not blinking, just listening. Rome has remembered it as eyes, and they are all looking down the road. Waiting. Asterisk, asterisk, it starts with sandals. Running fast, loud, purposeful. Not the lazy rhythm of errands, but the hard slap of panic. Somewhere near the west corridor, a cup crashes. Somewhere else, a servant drops a bundle of scrolls and doesn't bother picking them up. That's how you know it's real. Claudius is back in Rome, which spent a full day pretending nothing had happened, suddenly remembers everything. Expectation, the palace runs on. Order, reality, it runs on panic disguised as routine. Expectation, punishment comes after investigation. Reality, you're guilty as soon as someone starts sweating. The steward begins yelling. Not coherent orders, just nouns and verbs in random combinations. Statues, linen. Remove, no. Polish, where's the wine? No one asks questions. You just move. You grab cloth. You sweep a floor that was already clean. You straighten tapestries with trembling fingers while your heart tries to flee through your ribcage. Messalina, vanished. Gone before the gate guards. Even finished chewing their breakfast. No sign of her. No lingering perfume. It's just a slight disturbance in the air, like heat rising off sunburnt marble. You hear someone shout, "Burn the guest list." Someone else shout back, "Which one?" And no one laughs. The senators who attended the wedding are now wandering the halls with expressions that say, "I was only there for the dessert." As one of them clutches a fig tart like it's legal protection. You're sent to fetch wine for her. The emperor, quickly, carefully, exactly as ordered. Not too warm, not too cold, not too strong, not too watery, just right. You carry the jug like it holds the fate of your bones. It probably does. On the way, you pass a young scribe, crying quietly behind a column. You consider patting their shoulder, if you don't. Comfort is risky today. Everything is risky today. Rumors run ahead of facts. They always do. Some say Claudius doesn't know yet. Others say he's already writing the execution list. One servant claims to have seen a headsman sharpening his axe behind the stables. Another says the empress has disguised herself as a baker's apprentice. No one believes either, but both stories spread like oil on tile. You keep your head down, you keep your hands busy. You try not to look too calm or too nervous, just neutral. The emotional equivalent of room temperature porridge, because Rome forgives nothing. And it never forgets who laughed too loud, smiled too long, or delivered the wrong cup of wine. The storm hasn't hit yet, but the sky is heavy. Everyone is pretending the sun still shines. Asterisk, asterisk, you're in the hall with the cracked pillar. The one where pigeons nest, where gossip clings to the stone like damp moss. But today the air is different. Not heavy, not loud, just ... Held like everyone in the palace has taken the same breath and forgotten how to let it go. No one says her name. Not Messalina, not the empress, not even her, you hear someone say. That woman, with the kind of cautious distance, usually reserved for snakes and unpaid debts. Another whispers, "You know who?" As if the syllables themselves might be evidence. Expectation. Names give clarity. Reality. Names today are traps. Expectation. The empress would be mourned, feared, or reviled. Reality. She's edited. The palace erases fast. Her portraits vanish from the walls. Her seals scraped off official documents. Her favorite couch removed from the garden and replaced with a less controversial bench. Even her cat, a fat, spoiled thing, has been given to the laundry staff, who pretend it never had a silk collar. You carry a tray through the atrium and see the mosaic floor being scrubbed again. Not because it's dirty, because her. Sandals once touched it in the kitchen, someone drops a ladle. Sound is sharp, too loud. No one speaks. The silence after is thicker than the soup. A younger servant mouths her name once silently, just the shape of it, and gets elbowed so hard they drop a bowl. It shatters, and no one picks it up right away. They're all too busy listening. To make sure no one heard, you think of her walking down the hall days ago, laughing, hair pinned with pearls, surrounded by people nodding too much, and now nothing. Not just gone, but erased. Rome does that. You're celebrated until you're inconvenient. Then you become a shadow. Then not even that. You dust a shelf where her perfumes used to sit. Now there's nothing. Just dust. And an indent in the wood where a bottle once stood. Still smells faintly of myrrh. You almost forget and breathe in too deeply. A senator passes by, mumbling something about restoring order. You wonder if you toasted her last week? No one knows if she's dead yet, or hiding, or waiting. But the fear is the same, because saying her name means remembering, and remembering means acknowledging. And that is dangerous. You hear the word execution long before you see the scroll. It travels like wind through linen, soft, fast, hard to catch, but unmistakably real. A kitchen boy drops a basket of lentils. Scribe goes pale and writes the same sentence twice. You just keep walking, because stopping means looking like you've heard something you weren't supposed to. The order came from Claudius. That's what they say. But no one truly believes he thought of it alone. Expectation, the emperor decides. Reality, the emperor signs. Expectation. Power is loud and obvious. Reality. It whispers through back doors and writes in someone else's hand. You know the name Narcissus? Everyone does. Freedman, secretary, the man who speaks just behind the throne. Doesn't wear armor, but people fear him more than the guards. You once saw a senator bow to low when Narcissus passed, and then pretend it was on purpose, they say. He convinced Claudius to act. They say he arranged it all, the exposure, the orders, the final command. That Messalina's fate wasn't written in law, but in a conversation by torchlight. It's just offstage from official history. You don't know if it's true. But you know how people talk when Narcissus is nearby. Slower, simpler, as if clarity might protect them. You pass the scriptorium and glimpse the wax tablet. It's still warm. The stylus mark fresh. The name Messalina scratched with awkward formality, as if the scribe didn't want to press too hard. Just in case she came back and asked for it to be erased, they say she was offered a choice to take her own life. She couldn't. That a soldier had to finish it. You try not to think about that, but it lodges in your mind like a pit in fruit, not poisonous. Just heavy. You dust the hall later and notice something missing. A tapestry she favored. One of a garden scene with peacocks and pomegranates. In its place is bare plaster, recently patched. You didn't even hang a new one, just left the wall blank. Because a blank space says, no one stood here. You hear a guard mutter, Rome remembers what it's told to. Then he spits into the dirt and keeps walking. You realize it's not just about punishment. It's about control. It's about reminding everyone who decides when stories end, and who gets to tell them. And today, story's over. Signed, sealed, silenced. Asterisk. Asterisk. The hallway. Smells different now. Not bad, just unfamiliar. Like someone tried to erase the past with lavender water and new plaster. You can still feel it. The quiet, the memory, emptiness that hangs too neatly, like a freshly folded sheet that no one dares wrinkle. Messalina is gone. Her name erased, her image stripped, her footsteps replaced by the slow, careful walk of people trying not to be noticed. But the walls remember. You pass the alcove, where she once adjusted her earrings. Each morning while barking instructions about peacocks and peaches. The mirror is gone, but the smudge from her breath is still faintly there. One last ghost that even the steward missed. Expectation, history forgets quickly. Reality. Buildings hold grudges. Expectation. Her story ends with her death. Reality. It lingers in every empty room, in every servant who flinches at footsteps, in every scroll slightly smudged from shaking hands. You carry linens to the storage room and pause at the doorframe. She used to sweep through in silks that whispered, louder than most senators. It's quieter now. less perfume, more hesitation. The servants still talk, but only in corners and riddles. The one who wore pearls, the lady of many guests. That season, when everything smelled too sweet, you understand them? All. There's a tray in the scullery that no one uses anymore. It's dented on the edge the day she dropped it, laughing too hard at someone's misfortune. It sits quietly, unpolished, as if the metal itself feels awkward about still being. Here, you saw a child the other day, the daughter of a minor noble, playing with a broken hairpin. It used to belong to a queen, she whispered. You didn't correct her. What would you say? That queens aren't always remembered. That Rome sometimes trims history like a hedge, neat but dishonest. A senator passed you earlier and asked, if this was the hall to the baths. It wasn't. You almost told him. Then he glanced at a shadow on the wall and muttered, she used to wait there. You didn't wait for an answer. You straighten the curtains, no one looks at anymore. You sweep the floor, no one praises. You smooth the surface that keeps wrinkling, as if the stone itself refuses to forget what happened here, and you wonder if you disappeared, would anyone polish the memory clean? Or would your dented tray, your broken pin, your breath on the glass vanish quietly too? But the wall, it would remember. Rome forgets what it's told to. But the stones, they whisper dot, always. Asterisk, asterisk. They don't say her name anymore, not out loud. Not even in a whisper. But they talk about her constantly. She wore violet like it was armor. She made the steward cry once, with a compliment. She never drank wine unless it was poured by someone she trusted, which meant almost never. You're folding linen in the laundry room when two servants start comparing figs to certain personalities. Sweet but dangerous, one says, flicking a pit across the floor. You know exactly who they mean. Everyone does. Expectation, silence kills stories. Reality, it just makes them more interesting. Expectation, without a name a person, disappears. Reality, without a name, a legend begins. It's always half-truths now, or maybe quarter-truths. Someone claims she once bribed a poet with a cake shaped like the empire. Someone else insists she had secret tattoos. You've heard she cursed. A statue, and it cracked the next day. You've heard she was born under a bad star. You've heard she never slept. And through it all, her name never passes anyone's lips. Because saying it would mean acknowledging she was real, and real things are messy. Real things cause consequences. Legends, though, legends are safe. Legends are untouchable. They float just above punishment. You catch yourself once, almost, saying Messalina aloud while passing the garden where she used to hold her midnight strolls. You bite the word back. It tastes like pomegranate and poor judgment. In the kitchens, someone swears she once challenged a senator to a poetry duel, and won. Someone else swears it was a drinking contest. Either way, she won. A child asks who the lady in the painting was. The painting has since been removed, but the outline of its frame remains paler than the wall around it, like a sunburned ghost. No one answers the child. The nurse just hums a lullaby that sounds suspiciously like a scandal. You learn to speak about her in fragments, that time, back then, before the storm. Everyone nods, no one corrects. Even the silence. Has grammar now? Some say she was a villain, others say she was clever. A few, quietly, say she was brave, but only after looking over their shoulders. You carry a jug past her old chamber. It's empty, freshly scrubbed, and still smells faintly of rosewater and ambition. A voice behind you says, that room breathes differently. You don't turn around. You nod once. Because some ghosts don't haunt. They linger. And some whispers are louder than names. Asterisk, asterisk, Rome forgets quickly. Or at least it pretends to. A new cushion appears in the atrium, gold-trimmed. Stiff, the kind of cushion that no one wants to sit on but everyone pretends to admire. You're told to arrange it precisely, to make sure the tassels fall just right. It's to impress a new guest, a new connection, a new alliance. Messalina's favorite chair. Gone, quietly, as if it walked out one night without a sound. Expectation. Time heals everything. Reality. Time just rearranges the furniture. Expectation. Once someone is gone, life resumes. reality. Life pauses, rewinds, tiptoes forward, and then copies itself with better lighting. You fetch wine for a banquet. Not a feast. Not yet. Just a small gathering. But the air smells the same. Oil lamps and roasted fennel, tension and anticipation. Someone new sits near the emperor now. Not officially. Not quite. But everyone notices how her voice carries, how her sandals are loud on the tile. You set plates. You adjust the grapes so they tumble just so. You smile at nothing. You say nothing. You are, as always, present but absent. Just enough to serve. Never enough to matter. And yet you see the patterns repeat. Another robe trailing too far. Another glance held too long. Another guest who doesn't quite understand the weight of the room. It's all familiar. Different names. Same game. You're sweeping when a visiting senator chuckles and says, "At least this one won't cause trouble." He doesn't say whose trouble. He doesn't need to. You nod. You sweep. The dust is lighter today, but it still sticks. The steward changes the flower arrangements. Lilies now instead of roses. Easier to manage. Less memory in their scent. You catch a reflection in polished bronze. A woman with pearls. For a moment, your breath stops. But it's not her. It never is. Still, you pause at the hallway where her laughter once echoed. You listen. Nothing. Then almost a breeze. Rome. You realize never truly moves on. It just covers its tracks with new mosaic. Paints over the cracks. Pretends the echoes are drafts. And you keep walking the same steps. Carrying the same tray, pretending the scent in the linen is detergent and not memory. The name may be gone, but the space she carved, still there? You're in Pompeii now. Not as a citizen, not as a guest.
Yes.
As a shadow, part of the street noise. The background hum. The person who sweeps courtyards and pours wine without anyone ever asking your name. Which is fine. It keeps you safe. Safer. Than some of the people who leave love notes to gods on scraps of lead, because here in Pompeii, love isn't gentle. It's strategic, sticky, loud, and sometimes carved into cursed tablets with nails too dull for hope. Expectation. Love is between two people. Reality? It often requires 3 gods, 1 priest, and a suspicious-looking fishbone. Expectation. People confess affection in poems. Reality, they bury it under the floorboards and hope it works like magic. You see it all the time. People muttering prayers at statues, rubbing coins against altars, slipping folded wax into fountains. One woman tosses in a necklace and begs Venus to make a man fall in love with her. The necklace sinks. The man, as far as you know, does not. Someone once scratched a prayer to Cupid on the wall of a bathhouse. Passed it every morning. Lucius burned for me, as I burned for you. Underneath, someone else added, Lucius burns for cheese. You laughed. Quietly, the charm makers do good business. They delivered their wares, love filters, dried herbs, tiny wax figures shaped like a man or a woman or something. Halfway in between, they're always warm to the touch, as if recently held too long. They say, if you melt a wax doll over fire, while chanting a name, you'll bind their heart. You've seen it tried. You've seen it fail. You've seen it catch the curtain on fire and ruin someone's only tunic. You swept ash out of a doorway once and found a scratched plate of lead tucked beneath the dye. His threshold. On it, a name, a wish, and the words, let her dreams be restless until she sees me. You tucked it back, just in case. Love, after all, doesn't always want witnesses. The temples of Venus are always busy. It's not with solemn prayers, but with desperate bargains. Offerings of perfume, bread, hair, sometimes teeth. You're not sure if that one was intentional. You used to believe love was warm, safe, a place to rest. But here, it smells like wax, rust, smoke, and envy. And if you listen close, even the statues seem nervous. Asterisk, asterisk, you're delivering a basket of figs when the apothecary pulls you aside. Careful, he whispers. That one's for love. You assume he means the basket. You're wrong. He means the bottle tucked inside a clay flask, stoppered with wax and wrapped in a red ribbon that smells faintly of vinegar and confidence. He hands you a note. For Valeria, it reads, "Administer discreetly. You don't ask questions. You never ask questions. Not in Pompeii. No. Not when the answer might involve goat spleens and unreciprocated passion. Expectation. Love spells involve roses and moonlight. Reality. They involve powdered beetles and things you can't pronounce. Expectation. Magic is poetic. Reality. Magic itches. Valeria is waiting in her atrium, veiled, dramatic, and entirely unaware that she will soon be itchy for reasons unrelated to romance. You place the basket down. You bow. You leave quickly. The next day, she's pacing. We hear her through the courtyard wall. It tingles, she says, then burns, then tingles again. A servant mutters, "That's love." She does not laugh. You've seen this before? Love filters sold with more charm than science. Boiled herbs, vinegar, possibly ash, definitely something green and suspicious. The idea is to create yearning. The reality is a rash. Someone once gave a suitor a cake dusted with something from a charm maker's pouch. He vomited for 2 hours and then claimed enlightenment. He also swore never to love again, which, in some way, worked in the bathhouse. A girl confesses she rubbed an oil on her wrist and whispered a name under every full moon for 3 months. The name changed, the rash didn't. You sweep a hallway and find a charm written on parchment, folded beneath a lamp. It says, "Let him dream only of me," and wake sweating. The handwriting is excellent, the intent slightly threatening. You wonder how many loves in Pompeii began with a smile, and how many began with a mixture that smelled like spoiled salad. The apothecary sees you later. "It worked?" he asks. You shrugged. "She's passionate," you say. He grins. "Good, that's the point. You do not mention the rash. Because in Pompeii, obsession is more important than comfort. And sometimes a small burning sensation is just the cost of affection. Asterisk, asterisk, you're scrubbing soot off a fountain when you notice the wall again. That same patch, just above eye level, where someone carved a sentence too slowly to deny it later. The Latin is shaky, the letters uneven, but the message is permanent. "Cornelia, you smelled like figs and ruined me." You pause, not out of judgment, out of admiration. There's something about love, confessions, and stone that makes them feel more serious. Or maybe just more stubborn. Expectation. Love letters are secret, private, kept in drawers. Reality. Love letters are chiseled into bathhouse walls and shouted with a nail. Expectation. Confessions are soft. Reality. The best ones take effort and a very sharp rock. You've seen whole conversations scratched across walls, one insult at a time. Someone praises a lover's eyes. Someone else mocks his sandals. One line declares eternal devotion. The next says he smells like fish sauce. Romance, you realize, is never quiet here. It's written where everyone pees. A slave once confessed she saw her own name carved just outside the bakery. "I dream of you near the ovens." She blushed. Then she shrugged. Could have been the other Lucia, but she passed that spot. Every day, it's just a little slower than before. You clean tiles near the brothel and see a familiar scrawl. Felix kissed like he owed the gods an apology. Below that, Felix is married. Below that, to me. Then nothing you learn too. Read the stories like maps. One name shows up in 3 districts. Another appears only once, then disappears. The Pompeian version of heartbreak. The most poetic lines are often misspelled. Passion doesn't always check grammar. No one signs their full name. Just enough to guess. Just enough to deny. 1. Day you scratch your own word. Barely a letter, hidden behind a curtain near the theater's entrance. You don't know why. Maybe to be remembered. Maybe to pretend you mattered. Maybe because someone else might see it and wonder. You never tell. Anyone. Not because it's shameful, but because it's yours. Because in Pompeii, paper can burn, wax can melt, but a wall keeps a secret longer than most lovers do. Asterisk, You're sweeping the steps outside the Temple of Venus when your broom snags something. It's thin, metallic, bent at the corner, not trash, not coin. You lean down, brush off the dust, and find it. Another lead tablet, another whispered request to the divine, scribbled in uneven Latin and folded like a secret someone wanted, both buried and honored. You don't open it. Not out of respect, just experience. These never contain good news. Expectation. Prayers are spoken softly to the heavens. Reality. They're etched into lead and shoved into the floor with spite. Expectation. The gods are asked for mercy. Reality. They're asked for revenge, confusion, rashes, infertility, and awkward public embarrassment. These tablets, deficciones they call them, aren't love notes. They're complaints, affection gone sideways, passion curdled. They ask the gods to intervene, and not kindly. You've seen dozens, some with names carved in capital letters to make sure the curse doesn't miss. Others written in mirror. Script, just to make it harder for mortal eyes to read. One had drawings, stick figures bound in rope, their mouths marked with X. People say the gods don't listen anymore, but they still leave these tablets, just in case. You once helped. Sweep out a bakery where 5 tablets were found under the oven, all addressed to the same woman. Make her forget how to lie. Make her bread fall flat. Make her weep when she hears my name. Someone really hated her. Sourdoughh. A boy you know, barely older than you, once confessed he carved a tablet asking for his rival to lose all his hair. Grinned. He wears a hat now. Then he whispered. Coincidence, probably. Then he laughed like it wasn't. You imagine the gods of Pompeii sitting somewhere, surrounded by a mountain of tiny lead squares, squinting at handwriting, muttering again. With the rash request, and yet people still come, still fold, lead, still pray sideways. You tuck today's tablet back where you found it, between the stones, behind the altar. The spot everyone knows but no one mentions, because here, when love goes wrong, it doesn't end in silence. It ends in metal. Heavy, folded, and always someone else's fault. You see him every market day, standing under a crooked awning near the olive stall. Just past the man who sells suspicious cheese, he has a voice like burnt fennel and a cloak that's been purple for so long it's almost gray, he calls himself. Lucius the Binder of Hearts, which sounds noble until you notice the stains on his sleeves and the faint smell of boiled nettles. He sells charms, powders, oils, and promises. Especially promises. Expectation, love, is something you feel. Reality, it's something you purchase in a vial, for force of sturdy, and a nod of belief. Expectation. Magic is mysterious and rare. Reality, it's aggressively marketed between the fig baskets and fish guts. You've stopped to watch once, not for long. Just long enough to hear him claim his potions are brewed under moonlight and tested by priestesses. You know better. Seen those same bottles reused to hold pickled onions, his bestseller? A filter called Eternum Amor, Eternal Love, thick green, bubbly, smells like hope and mold. One woman swears it made her husband stay home 3 nights in a row. Another says it gave her hives. Lucius blames the gods for the inconsistencies. He offers a guarantee, love or your coin back. But no one ever asks. Not because it always works, because asking would mean admitting it didn't. You once delivered a bundle to his stall. Dried rosemary and powdered snail shells. He winked. For potency, he whispered. You nodded. You didn't ask what kind. A teenage boy hovers near his cart, pretending to inspect olives. Eventually, he buys a scroll with the words, how to make them notice you. He holds it like, it might bite. Probably will. Emotionally, Lucius keeps a goat tied behind his table. Claims the goat can sniff infidelity. It mostly just eats rope. Still people pay to watch. One day he hands you a sachet for luck and closeness. You don't ask what it means. You just tuck it in your belt pouch next to your key and 3 broken buttons. You'll never use it, but it's oddly comforting, like carrying a secret you didn't write. Because in Pompeii, love comes in clay. Bottles, ink-smeared scrolls, and pockets that smell faintly of mint and regret. And if you believe hard enough, sometimes it even works. Asterisk, asterisk, you're sweeping the courtyard of a modest villa. When you notice it again, the small white statue of Venus tucked between two cypress trees. She stands poised, polished, and slightly tilted, as if amused by her surroundings. But what always catches your eye is the same thing that always catches everyone's fingers. Her ear, it's worn smooth. Not by time, not by weather, by touch. Dozens of small, nervous, hopeful touches, always the ear. As if she listens better than she sees. Expectations, statues are for decoration. Reality, they're confidants with surprisingly worn features. Expectation, people pray in temples. Reality, they whisper into marble ears behind laundry lines. It's not just that one. Every statue of Venus in Pompeii, from the Grand Temple down to the chipped garden ones, has the same feature. A thumb-slicked ear, some even have finger-smudged chins or noses, but it's the ears that take the most wear. Love needs a listener, not a judge. You once saw a fishmonger's apprentice approach a statue in the public square, stand very still, then lean in and mutter something like, "Make her look at me," just once, without sighing. Then he kissed the base and ran. A laundry girl swears if you whisper your name and there's 3 times into the statue's left ear, they'll dream of you that night. She tried it. The next day, the boy she liked sneezed when she walked past. She took it as a sign. The baker's wife scratches the statue behind its ear every market day. She gets itchy if I don't, she says, dead serious. Her husband just shrugs. The bread sells either way. You catch yourself doing it once, just the lightest brush with your fingertips as you pass, not because you believe it, but because everyone else does. And belief, you've noticed, has a way of sticking to your skin, whether you invite it or not. One night, you sweep the portico outside the temple and hear whispers, low, private, crowded. The moon is full. People line up not to pray, but to tell. Not confessions, not pleas. Just little stories curled into marble ears. You wonder if Venus remembers, if every whisper adds to her knowing smile, or if she's simply been listening. So long she forgot how not to. You finish sweeping. You glance at the statue, and though you know better, you still pause, just for a second. Because love in Pompeii is always half practical, half foolish, and sometimes half an ear to trusting asterisk. Asterisk it. Starts with a shout in the middle of the herb market. Then comes the crashing sound, clay breaking, people scattering, and somewhere in the chaos, a loud bleat. You turn just in time to see a woman chasing a goat that's wearing stead staring, what appears to be a garland of garlic and sheer embarrassment. This is how most love spells end in Pompeii. Expectation. A love potion makes them fall for you instantly. Reality. A love potion gives them hives, stomach cramps, or in one case, an uncontrollable need to insult vegetables. Expectation. The magic is subtle. Reality. It involves goats, garlic, and the deeply suspicious application of honey to bread. You learn later that the woman had visited Lucius, the binder of hearts, again. This time, she was told to rub her intended's name onto a scroll soaked in rosewater and goat's milk, then feed him a fig stuffed with pine nuts, mint, and essence of arousal. No one knows what that is. Lucius refuses to explain. The man did eat the fig. He also had a violent allergic reaction, kissed a statue of Mercury, and ran screaming into the forum. The goat got loose during the chaos, having licked the rest of the mixture off the plate. You saw it all from the olive stand. You did not ask questions. Later that day, a new recipe spreads among the more reckless housemaids. Mix vinegar, rosemary, and powdered snail shells, then murmur their name 3 times while spinning clockwise. You find powdered snail shells in your laundry bin and decide not to investigate. The worst, though, was the potion someone dropped into a cup of wine. The drinker didn't fall in love. He fell asleep in the fishmonger's stall and woke up believing he was Neptune's cousin, insisted on being addressed as Lord of Eels for the rest of the week. Still, people keep trying, they whisper. New recipes. They invent new rules, only under a full moon. Only if the goat sneezes. Only after fasting from turnips. You help sweep up broken jars, sticky scrolls, and the occasional wilted garland. The goat reappears in the courtyard 2 days later, It looks smug. Someone has painted a heart on its side in berry juice. You pretend not to notice because in Pompeii, failed magic doesn't end the hope. It just shifts the blame to ingredients, to the gods, or, most often, to the goat, and somehow. No one ever blames the idea itself. Asterisk, asterisk, it's not on any map. No official one, anyway. But you know the alley. Narrow, crooked, and always damp. Even when the sky's dry. Halfway down, tucked behind two mismatched barrels and an abandoned sandal, is the shrine small, cracked, tilting slightly like it's eavesdropping. On every whisper that's ever passed by, it's a shrine to Venus, probably. Or maybe to Fortuna. Or someone less official. The kind of deity who answers quietly, with favors and smirks instead of thunderbolts. No one agrees on the name, but everyone agrees on the offerings. Expectation, shrines are cleaned, adorned, honored. Reality. This. One smells like ash, garlic, and singed hope. Expectation, you leave a coin or a flower. Reality, you leave hair, lots of hair. Strands of it curled, plaited, burned, locks wrapped in thread, lumps tucked into folded parchment like offerings or accusations. You sweep the alley sometimes, pretending not to notice the odd handful of someone's desperation caught in the wind. You ask once. A girl shrugs. Hair binds desire, she says. It's what the old women claim. Then she spits over her shoulder and knots her braid a little tighter. You find other things too. Buttons, bits of fabric, the occasional tooth, though you sincerely hope it was already loose. Someone left a chicken foot once. Someone else left a whole love poem carved into the back of a cracked tile. You read the first line. I would burn my sandals to walk where you sleep. Then you stopped reading at night. The alley hums with murmurs. People crouch beside the shrine, whispering their wishes like they're slipping secrets into someone's laundry. One woman burned a list of names beside it, watching the ashes curl like accusations. You passed her on the way out. Her eyes were red, but her posture was straighter. The gods, you suspect, don't visit this shrine, but something listens. Maybe the wall, maybe memory, maybe just the lingering scent of rose oil and anxiety. You once saw a boy kneel there with a fistful of his own hair, muttering, "Just let her say my name." He left the hair. She married someone else a week later. Still, he came back, because when you have nowhere else to place your longing, even a cracked wall behind a fish stall starts to look divine. Jealousy in Pompeii isn't subtle. It doesn't sit quietly, brooding in corners. It walks barefoot through the forum, sharpens quills at dawn, and burns things it probably shouldn't. You've seen more revenge scrolls than tax forms, and far worse poetry than you ever asked for. It usually begins with ink. Expectation. Jealousy is silent and internal. Reality. It's loud, rhymed, and occasionally smudged with tears and cheap wine. Expectation. A rival is ignored with dignity. Reality. A rival gets 3 verses and a curse written in footnotes. You sweep the atrium floor and find one of these verses, slipped beneath a potted fern. May your sandals rot and your teeth betray you. May your dreams be of me, but I not of you. It's signed only you recognize the handwriting. It belongs to a seamstress who recently discovered her suitor had a friend who helped him with his toga. The friend now has singed garments and apparently unsettling dreams. You once helped clean up after a poetry duel. Yes, an actual duel, with wax tablets instead of swords. Each participant recited verses while glaring at the other across a basket of stale dates. One poem ended with "May your beauty fade like olive oil in the sun." The crowd gasped. The judges, unfortunately, were drunk. Then comes the fire. Love notes are burned in little corners, behind fountains and cracked oil lamps. You've watched? People toss in names, hair, tokens, all flaring for a second, then crumbling into ash. One man burned his own name, claiming she'll miss me more if I vanish symbolically. She married his cousin. The flames, however, were dramatic. You find the aftermath in all kinds of places. Scorched edges on parchment, smoke-stained walls, a small pile of charcoal where someone clearly tried to make emotions look dignified. It didn't work. Jealousy's most reliable form? Public poetry nailed 2 doorways. The meter's always off. The grammar weeps, but the emotion? Unmistakable. And if you think Rome takes poetry seriously, Pompeii takes it personally. You dust a bench near the baths and find this scratched into the wood. He took my heart. My ring, my tunic string, may fleas dance forever in his sheets. You smile. You don't know who wrote it, but you agree. Because in Pompeii, jealousy doesn't sit in silence. It writes. It burns, it rhymes terribly, and it survives. Asterisk, asterisk. It happens without warning. 1 minute the baker's arguing about figs again, the next silence. No, the peaceful kind. The other kind. The heavy, unnatural one that presses into your chest like a lie you haven't told yet. Then the sky turns black. The air gets hot in the wrong direction. In Pompeii, pauses. Expectation. Cities fall with drama. Reality. They freeze mid-thought. Expectation. People run. Reality. People hesitate. Hands half raised. Mouths open. Lovers still arguing over olives. You're not near the center when it begins. Just in a courtyard, folding linen, watching steam curl from the bathhouse vents. Then dust falls. Soft at first. Almost pretty. Then thicker. Hotter. Louder. You see a man clutching a statue. Not of Jupiter. Not of Mars. Of Venus. He doesn't pray. He just holds it. Like maybe she'll blink and fix it. You duck into a storeroom. Not much protection. But it's something. Shh. You hear footsteps pounding the tiles. Someone screams a name. Not a god's. A person's. Then again. Then silence. The thing about Pompeii is that it never said goodbye. The cups were still on the tables. The tablets still half written. Love spells half whispered. You remember one charm you found the day before? Scrawled onto the back of a receipt for figs? May we grow old, wrinkled, and still ridiculous together? You smiled. You left it there now. You wonder if they ever read it. Afterward, long afterward, when the ash is cool and the city's a rumor, they'll dig.
Oh.
They'll find rings still on fingers, loaves still in ovens, kisses still in progress. They'll find those lead tablets, those wax dolls, those pathetic poems. They'll wonder. They'll guess they won't find Venus. She didn't survive, but they'll find her ears smoothed by centuries of hope. They'll wonder why, and they'll find love. Not the grand kind, the messy, hopeful, desperate kind. The kind that writes terrible poetry and asks too much of gods. You sweep ash from the entrance. Your broom makes no sound, just a soft drag. Like memory and Pompeii, this city of charmers and curses and whispered names becomes still, but not empty, because love doesn't vanish in flame. It lingers in stone. Asterisk, asterisk. You're not on the guest list, of course. You're never on the guest list. But you are in the room, close enough to hear the jokes, the sighs, the calculated laughter. You're carrying wine, placing fruit, adjusting platters of honey-roasted nuts with the precision of someone who knows the real war is being fought between the seats. This is not dinner. This is courting Roman style. Expectation. Love begins with a glance. Reality. It begins with a seating chart and a bowl of boiled lentils. Expectation. Couples are drawn together by fate. Reality. They're dragged into proximity by a host. With excellent gossip instincts, the couches are arranged in a semicircle. Not for comfort, but for maximum visibility. One cushion too close, and it's scandal. One cushion too far, and it's insult. You once watched a senator's daughter pretend to faint just to be moved closer to a poet. She made it look delicate, but she landed on his foot. It was not delicate. You serve a tray of olives and try not to look too interested when the hostess casually accidentally calls a guest by the name of someone else's husband. The wrong wife coughs. The wrong husband blushes. The room smells like perfume, tension, and slightly overcooked pigeon. This is the courtship of the elite. Not flowers and sonnets, but strategic citrus placement and compliments disguised as insults. You hear one man say, You have the wit of Cicero and the patience of his worst client. She laughs. She fans herself. She says, and you speak like someone who hasn't had wine poured in his lap yet? You step back quickly. Everything is layered. A toast is also a threat. Smile is also a dare. The grapes aren't just grapes. They're bait. You once saw two people fall in love over a bowl of fish sauce. He made a joke. She didn't laugh, and that was how he knew it was real. The rules are endless. Never praise the food too early. It makes you look desperate. Never reach for the same fig twice. It looks planned. And never, ever drop a cup near the person you admire. It's cliché. It's messy. And someone will accuse you of doing it on purpose. You collect the empty plates while someone recites a love poem. It's dreadful. Rhyming moonlight with insight and bite, but the woman it's for size anyway, or pretends to. Same effect. Because here in the marble glow of the dining hall, love is a performance, and everyone is acting. Asterisk, asterisk. You're polishing a bronze tray near the fountain when the poet arrives. You can always tell not just by the toga less clean than it should be, or the sandals more worn than he admits, but by the air he brings with him. A kind of misty confidence, like someone who's convinced that words can pay for wine. He's here for love, or, more accurately, for courtship by verse, the Roman version of gambling with ink. Expectation, poems win hearts. Reality, poems win attention until someone richer walks in. Expectation, a beautiful stanza outweighs a fat dowry. Reality, the stanza gets quoted. The dowry gets married. You watch as he approaches the daughter of a merchant, not nobility, but wealthy enough to fund a small temple. She's seated beneath a vine-covered pergola, sipping watered wine and pretending not to notice the commotion. He clears his throat. He recites, "Your eyes eclipse the torches of Vesta. Your voice makes the forum hush. If love were taxed, I'd still be poor, but I'd owe every sestertius to you." There's a pause, a murmur. Someone claps. Her father does not. You've seen this play out before. Words are a lovely appetizer, but land, name, and cattle are the main course. The girl smiles politely. She says nothing. Her bracelet costs more than the poet's home. Her silence costs more than his career. Later, you hear her repeating the poem, not mockingly, just softly, to herself. You wonder if she liked it. You also wonder if it matters. You sweep petals from the floor while two old women debate whether real love still exists. One says yes, points to a couple who met at a theater and still hold hands. The other scoffs. They hold hands because he's blind, and she won't let go. You pass a young boy scribbling on parchment. Writing for her, he says. She likes words. You nod. You do not mention that her mother likes gold. That night, the poet drinks too much, recites the same poem backward, and is asked to leave. You watch him go, not angry, not bitter, just quiet, like someone who knows that beauty echoes even. If it doesn't build a house, because in Rome, verse may melt hearts, but dowries pave roads. You're carrying a jug of diluted wine past the triclinium when it happens. A simple gesture, barely noticeable. A flick of a fan, quick, practiced, absolutely lethal. The man across the room smiles. The woman with the fan does not. And just like that, a war has started. Expectation, romance blooms through grand gestures. Reality, it ignites over a glance and dies by the third refill of wine. Expectation, love needs poetry. Reality, it needs timing, fans, and plausible deniability. You learn quickly, fans aren't for heat, they're for signaling. Flick disinterest, 2 flicks maybe, free flicks, and a glance under lashes dangerously close to invitation. There are rules, of course, unwritten, unspoken, and utterly binding. A dropped handkerchief is flirtation if recovered slowly, insult if ignored, and scandal if someone else picks it up. You once saw a wink start a duel, not a dramatic duel, just two men stabbing olives with unreasonable aggression. The woman they Fought over married a man with no eyebrows. No one ever understood why. You pour wine and watch a couple dance around each other with fans and compliments like swords. He praises her hair. She replies, "My slaves curled it." He says, "They must be poets," she says. "They're mostly blind." He laughs too hard. She flicks her fan once, then twice, then stops. Another night, a woman waves her fan toward the ceiling, looks at the moonlight and says, "Ah, to be kissed under that glow." Man replies, "Even torches burn brighter near you." He thinks he's won. She turns to the woman beside her and says, "Isn't he sweet?" The second woman nods. The fan snaps closed. You hear a servant mutter, "The fan has spoken." You nod. It always does. You help clear dishes as the laughter shifts to tension. Someone praised the wrong necklace.
Ow.
Someone complimented the wrong ant. Now the fan is moving in furious little jerks. You pretend not to notice, but everyone notices. Later, you find a fan discarded in the garden. Fabric is torn, the ribs bent. Looks like it's fought a battle, and maybe it has. You leave it there. Because in Rome, the most dangerous weapons don't clang, they flutter. Asterisk, asterisk, you're refilling. The fruit bowl again. Grapes, of course, always grapes. Plump ones, split ones, ones that seem to stare back at you like they know they're part of something bigger than lunch. You arrange them just so, clusters spilling casually across the silver, a fig tucked artfully at the edge, as if someone might pluck it and change their destiny. Because in Rome, courtship doesn't always speak. Sometimes it peels. Expectation, fruit is for eating. Reality, it's for flirting, testing, implying, rejecting, inviting, and occasionally throwing. Expectation, you confess with words. Reality, you confess with grapes. And if you're bold apricots. You once watched a young nobleman offer a grape to a senator's daughter. Not just place it on her plate, offer it gently, thumb and forefinger, slow. She stared at it like it contained a prophecy. Then she bit it in half and said nothing. He left immediately. No one ever explained why. The peel matters. If someone peels a grape for you, it means something. If they do it without looking at you, something else entirely. If they peel it, hand it over, then eat it themselves, you're in trouble. You deliver a bowl to the garden. A woman in silk is feeding slices of pear to two admirers. She doesn't speak. She just smiles as one fumbles with a pit and the other nearly chokes. You retreat. Slowly, you remember the time someone threw a date at a rival across the table. It missed, hit a senator's wife. She blinked, raised an eyebrow, and married the rival 3 weeks later. There are rules. Never offer fruit with both hands. It looks desperate. Never choose the smallest grape. It's insulting. Never eat the last fig unless you're ready to propose or flee. You clean up after a banquet and find 3 half-eaten peaches left side by side. One is cleanly sliced. One is bitten. One is mashed under a sandal. You stare at them for a moment and wonder what kind of argument ended in that particular arrangement. A child once asked you why adults stare so much at fruit. You said because they're scared to say how they feel. The child nodded, then ate 4 grapes at once and declared, "I love everybody." Simpler times, because in Rome, hearts don't break loudly. Is usually between the thumb and forefinger of someone pretending not to look. Asterisk, asterisk, you're folding napkins, thick linen, broidered with someone else's initials, when the duel begins, not with swords. Not even with voices raised. It begins with a compliment so sharp you could use it to gut a fish. "You must bathe in moonlight," says one guest to another. There's no other explanation for that glow. "Oh," the other replies, smiling like a cat near a warm plate. "I simply borrow the light your wit reflects." Expectation, compliments build harmony. Reality, compliments draw blood without, leaving marks. Expectation, flattery is harmless. Reality, in Rome, it's a sport. And no one leaves unbruised. You've seen it 100 times. A backhanded remark, disguised as praise. "Your new gown is so brave," only you would dare. Wear emeralds with your complexion. Your poetry reminds me of a sunrise, sudden and mostly silent. The key is tone and timing. And looking just innocent enough when everyone else winces. You pass wine as the dueling pair circle each other verbally. One raises her cup and says, "You always look so rested. Such an impressive talent for ... doing so little." The other responds, "Thank you. I learned from watching your marriage." You cough, quietly, into your sleeve. The host pretends not to notice. The musicians pretend to play louder. Somewhere in the corner, someone mutters, "We'll need more olives for this." The duel escalates. You've such elegant restraint, only 2 brooches tonight. And you've such generosity, I can see you let your sleeves borrow your dinner. You once heard of a duel that ended in actual tears, not from rage, from laughter. The winner apparently complimented a rival's hairstyle so cleverly that the woman laughed until she fell into a basin of wine. Later, when you're cleaning, you find fragments of the evening. A snapped bracelet, a broken fan, a poem torn exactly in half. You wonder who won. But in Rome, the scoreboard is invisible, and the bruises are always emotional. The woman with the brightest smile, likely the one most wounded, the one offering. Extra figs? Probably apologizing in code? You finish folding the napkins? One still smells faintly of perfume and fury, because here, in marble halls lit by oil lamps and ego, courtship is not always gentle. Sometimes it's a compliment. With teeth, asterisk, asterisk, you're placing cushions again, counting them, fluffing them, arranging them with the seriousness of a general planning a siege. Because in Rome, love doesn't begin in the heart. It begins in the layout of the triclinium. Expectation. Romance grows in gardens. Reality, it grows on a slightly elevated couch near the good olives. Expectation, chance meetings, spark connection. Reality, nothing is by chance when a hostess owns. The seating chart, the rule is simple: 3 diners per couch. All reclining, all pretending they're not trying to touch knees. The host arranges everyone like a mosaic. The poet next to the widow, the cousin across from the heiress, the wealthy merchant dangerously close to someone else's daughter. You once saw a guest arrive early just to accidentally move the name tags. The chaos that followed included a duel in the courtyard and a scandal involving a misplaced pomegranate. The pomegranate was innocent. The cousin was not. Tonight, the arrangement is particularly volatile. You can feel it in the air. The way people glance before sitting. How elbows are held just a bit too stiff. One young woman hesitates before taking her seat. It's not the food she's thinking about. It's who she's facing. You pour wine and pretend not to hear the whispered question. Did she do this on purpose? The answer is always yes. You once overheard a hostess explaining her logic. You must let them think they chose, but guide them gently, like a goat toward better grass. She then placed a known flirt between 2 rivals and claimed it was for balance. There are signals: a foot left untucked, a plate passed too often, a napkin dropped with suspicious regularity. Each moment tiny, each one screaming. You've rearranged seating before, quietly, at a bribe, at a threat. Once, just for amusement. You watched an entire dinner unravel because 2 ex-lovers were accidentally placed together. They spent 3 courses not speaking. Then one flicked a grape into the other's wine. The dessert was pears and tension. At the end of the night, you collect the name tags. One has been torn in half. One has been rewritten in new ink. One has lipstick on the back. Because in Rome, love isn't always chosen. Sometimes it's assigned. You're halfway across the atrium when someone shouts, "This wasn't meant for you," which in Rome means, it absolutely was. The scroll lands at your feet. Don't open it. Not because it's not tempting, but because you already know it's a love letter. It always is. It's folded just so, sealed with wax.
Yes.
And carrying the scent of someone's perfume and someone else's poor judgment. Expectation. Letters are private. Reality. Letters in Rome are theatrical props with poor aim. Expectation. If you receive a letter, it was meant for you. Reality. If you receive a letter, someone's pretending it wasn't. You've seen this too many times. The delivery is always accidental. A servant places the wrong scroll. A slave boy stumbles and drops it mistakenly. Someone shouts after it lands. Wrong Domitia. But somehow the right Domitia always reads it. One letter you remember was folded into a loaf of bread. The recipient bit into it, choked slightly, kept chewing. The scroll was soaked in wine and desperation. The message, I burn for you like the baths of Caracalla. A little dramatic, a little soggy. You've carried letters yourself, small. Ones tucked in sandals, wrapped in fabric, or hidden in jars of olives. One woman requested her message be painted inside a cup, then accidentally given to the man of her choosing. He drank it. Never noticed the words. Married her anyway. It's not because of the message, because she owned vineyards. You find a scroll in the laundry pile. It reads, your voice clings to me like steam. No name, no direction, but you smell. Fig blossoms on the parchment and know exactly who wrote it. You've also seen the aftermath. A man weeping in the garden because his letter was returned unopened. The seal still intact. A whole tragedy wrapped in unbroken wax. Another time, too. Letters crossed in transit, each declaring love to the wrong cousin. They married anyway. The letters were used to light the ceremonial fire. You sometimes wonder what your letter would say. Someone ever wrote one. You imagine it would be short, blunt. Something like, you sweep well, I noticed. 'Cause in Rome, love letters are never secret. They just pretend to be. Asterisk, asterisk, you're adjusting the cushions again, the ones nobody sits on properly. When the musician begins tuning the lyre, it's slow, deliberate, off by just enough to make the room lean in. The guests pretend not to listen, but everyone listens. Because tonight he's not just playing, he's speaking. Expectation. Music is background. Reality. It's a declaration. Disguised in plucked strings and modest glances. Expectation. The lyre is entertainment. Reality. It's a message board you can't interrupt. You've seen it before. The way the player tilts ever so slightly toward one guest. The way he slows on certain chords, lifts his eyes just long enough to be noticed. Not too long. Just enough to imply everything and confirm nothing. You refill a wine cup and watch a woman nod along. Expression neutral, fingers still. But her foot taps just once, perfectly timed with a note that probably meant, I remember. Or, I'm here. Or stop writing poems and just ask. You overheard a man say once she didn't answer my letter, but she listened to the whole second verse? It's practically a marriage proposal in Roman terms. You don't play, but you've picked up meanings. A rising trill? Nervousness? A sudden pause before the refrain? Regret? A soft, sustained string drawn out while the wine is poured? That's either longing or indigestion. Hard to tell. One evening, a nobleman requested a song about loyalty. The musician played a slow, aching piece that ended with the word alone repeated 3 times. His wife left the room halfway through. No one mentioned it. You've seen rivals request opposing songs at the same banquet. One light and lilting, about spring. One heavy, brooding, about a wolf losing its mate. The musician played both. Slowly, and accepted tips from both men. The lyre, it turns out, has no loyalty. But the musician? He remembers. You find him after dinner, wrapping his strings carefully, as if the night itself might be reused. Nothing. You nod. He nods back. That's enough. Because in Rome, when words are too risky, too public, or too expensive, the lyre says what everyone's pretending not to feel. Asterisk, asterisk. You're distributing sweets at the end of the banquet? Little bowls of candied almonds, sticky with honey, glittering faintly with sugar and suggestion. There. Not just dessert. Not here. Not in this room full of polished smiles and unfinished confessions. Expectation. Almonds are for taste. Reality. Almonds are for strategy, seduction, and plausible deniability. Expectation. Sweets are shared freely. Reality. They're handed carefully, one at a time. Each one a message in edible form. You place a bowl before a merchant's daughter. She doesn't touch them, not yet. She waits until the man seated next to her reaches in, selects the biggest. One, and offers it with a flourish. She pauses, takes it, bites slowly. The silence is louder than the liar was. You refill wine and pretend not to see. But you do. The giving of sweets is an art. If you serve yourself first, you're selfish. If you wait too long, you're disinterested. If you pick the smallest one for someone else, you're sending a message. If you pick the largest one for yourself, well, you'd better be married already once. You saw a senator's son slip a candied almond into a woman's palm under the table. She closed her fingers around it without looking. That same night, she left the banquet early. No explanation, just the smell of her perfume lingering by the door. You found almonds tucked into napkins like notes, hidden under plates. Once and left behind like tiny monuments to almost love. One noble woman requested that her sweets be presorted. No cracked ones, she said. It ruins the magic. You sorted them, of course, even polished them with a cloth. She never ate any, but her admirer did every single one while watching her the whole time. You're not sure what the symbolism was. You're not sure she was either. Later, you find a trail of candied almonds on the garden path. 7 of them, spaced like breadcrumbs. You don't follow. You've read enough poetry to know how that ends. You pocket one. Just one. It's slightly sticky, a little too sweet. Because in Rome, nothing is ever just a treat. Even honey comes with a question. Asterisk, asterisk, the banquet is over. The laughter has faded, though it lingers faintly, clinging to the corners of the marble walls like wine stains no one wants to scrub. The plates are stacked. The cushions are askew. The lyre rests silent in the corner, one string still humming. From an unintentional brush, you're sweeping again. Of course, you always are. Expectation. The end of the night is silence. Reality. It's when the truth slips out. Too quiet for the feast, but too loud for dreams. Expectation, everything important, is said during the meal. Reality, the real things are said just after in doorways, corridors, and half-lit gardens. You hear it, it's a murmur, behind a curtain that hasn't been drawn all the way. I shouldn't have, someone says. Then, after a breath, but I wanted to, you pause, then keep sweeping. You're part of the quiet now. The guests have gone, but not all at once. Some linger. Some pace the garden like thoughts that forgot where they were going. A man with wine on his sleeve leans against a pillar and whispers to no one. She looked at me this time, says it like it's both triumph and defeat. You. Clear away a plate and find a napkin folded into the shape of a swan. You've seen her do that before, the one with the laugh that's too light to be happy. It means something. You don't know what, but it does. The fan lies open on a bench. You close it gently. Someone's sandal strap is still under the table. Someone's bracelet sits on the fountain rim. Someone's feelings are still floating above the leftover almonds. You pass a servant's whispering by the garden gate. He told her, one says. What did she say? Nothing. The word drops like a pebble into a still pond. You don't stop walking, but you carry the ripple. You breathe in the scent of extinguished lamps, oil and ash, and something. Sweeter underneath? Maybe rosewater, maybe longing. Because the final act of any Roman courtship isn't the poem or the fig, or the fan flick. It's the thing no one says until the plates are empty and the cushions sag. It's the whisper when there's nothing left to eat, but still something left to want. Asterisk, asterisk, and now. The banquet has ended. The torches have guttered low. The marble floors lie quiet under the weight of scattered crumbs and vanished conversations. And the air holds the last notes of someone's laughter stretched thin like smoke. You stayed. Until the end. Until even the fans were folded. Until the last fig was eaten or left untouched, like a secret nobody claimed. Thank you for drifting with us tonight through whispers, glances, and half-said things. Through the warmth of lamps and the cool hush of stone. You've stepped through the rhythms of courtship, the rituals of longing, and the quiet absurdity of trying to be loved when everyone else is also pretending not to be trying. And now, as you lie there, soft in your own quiet, know this, the city has stilled. But its breath is still in the walls. and you know it will repeat tomorrow, as it always does.